So far away, Lucas, what's your favourite cryptid?
I don't remember what cryptids are.
It's a creature that may or may not exist, like a Bigfoot.
Oh.
Yeah!
I'm going to say Nessie.
I do like Nessie. Protected in Scotland as well. You know, it's on the endangered species list. Loch Ness Monster, right there, alongside the national animal of Scotland itself, the unicorn. But yes, so welcome to another episode of Wiki Weekends. I'm your host, Karl Smallwood, joined off camera and off screen by my co-host, Lucas Holland.
I mean, I was definitely waving, but you can't see that because I'm off screen.
They can hear you talking. And today we're talking specifically about Bigfoot. So you can find a link to the wiki we're referring to below. But before we get into that, Lucas, what do you know about some Bigfoot?
Oh, I know he's big and he's got feet.
That's the one, yes. So the reason we're talking about this is because I've been asked to talk about this by you and by Brad over on Fact Theme, because I don't know why it resonated with everyone so much, but I just, as I often do, was watching some bad TV, because I love me some bad TV. I adore crappy reality TV shows about a very specific or niche subject, which is how I ended up watching a show called $10 Million Bigfoot Hunt.
And I saw you tweet about this, and I think my favourite part was the guy that insisted that he'd killed Bigfoot, but was still on the hunt for Bigfoot.
Yeah, so, and during the course, and the basic premise of that show is that, and it's genius in a way of, okay, so we're going to offer a literal $10 million prize to someone who can prove that Bigfoot exists. And to do that, they need video evidence and DNA evidence that is unequivocal and, like, you know, verified by an independent scientist. So you're never going to have to pay that out.
Now, 9 determined teams are making their way to a remote base camp. If any of them can provide definitive visual and DNA proof of Bigfoot's existence or capture one alive, they will take home one of the biggest prizes in television history.
It's genius, but you'll get the weirdo. Weirdos will sign up thinking they're going to win $10 million, but you're never going to have to fucking pay them. It's genius.
Because Bigfoot doesn't exist.
Exactly. And like, there's someone out there, well, he does exist. And it's like, you know what? You go to season 2. Why not? You might win $10 million. And the range of people on there is quite broad, considering, like, you know, they're all people who think Bigfoot's running around a forest somewhere. But one guy really stood out, and it's like, well, what makes you think you're an expert on finding Bigfoot? And he goes, well, I killed him. He's like, what? It's like, I killed a Bigfoot.
I've shot and killed 2 of them.
And I was like, just show what you see that in the first episode, and I'm like, I'm hooked. This is it. When you say, like, can't watch One Piece, I can't. I'm too busy watching $10 million Bigfoot.
The thing is, that just means he murdered a dude.
Well, that's the thing. Yes, they say, like, they have like a scientist in who clearly doesn't want to be there, but he's there for the paycheck, and like he just reams everyone out over their evidence. Because people are like, I found a stick.
We found a very interesting stick marker, if you will, that was drove in the ground really hard. Look here. What do we have here?
That's tubular poop.
Right.
And it's like, what? Bigfoot could have messed with that stick, and it's like, that's not proof that Bigfoot exists. It's a stick. But because obviously he's arguing with people who think Bigfoot's real, they go, well, he just doesn't see what I see. He's like, he's a fucking scientist. Anyway, he asked the dude, he's like, what makes you think you know, why I killed Bigfoot? Like, what? Explain? He goes, well, I saw a Bigfoot and I shot it, and then I buried it in the woods. And he goes, okay, and did you bring any evidence back? Did you bring the body back? And he's like, no, I brought some fur though. You did? Yeah, I got it, like, you know, independently corroborated by a scientist. He's like, okay, and what did they say? Well, the fur came from a feral man. And the scientist on the show goes, there's no such thing as feral man. You can't tell if a man is feral from the hair that they're dropped. This sounds like you shot someone and buried them in the woods, and then they never bring it up again.
Justin is a little crazy. He needs to be on meds. I'm a little nervous about being outside with him on a hunt tomorrow.
And they let that guy be on the show, walk around the woods with a shotgun.
I just can't.
But here's the thing though, right? Because I got so compelled, I went and looked up another documentary about Bigfoot where they interview him. And they ask him straight up, because the guy doing the interview is like a vet and like a researcher. And it's like, so you shot Bigfoot? And he's like, yeah. And he goes, why would you do that? And he's like, well, you saw a creature that you couldn't explain, so you shot it? And the guy just goes, well, it was a monster.
When we see this thing standing just like I'm standing, and we see us raise its hands.
But you shot?
Yeah.
Why?
There was a monster in the woods.
And you can't argue with that, but then he says, what happened? Like, well, I've noticed a little one, and I shot that. So he shot a baby Bigfoot, and he says, I held it in my hands, and I looked down, and I saw it had human eyes, and it looked at me, and I felt so guilty, that's why I buried it.
The man just killed, like, a parent and a child.
Well, that's the thing, and then in that documentary, he has some hair that he found, right? He gives them, and they say, it's from a bear. And they ask him straight up, like, are you making this up? And, like, this is why I think he's such a weirdly compelling dude. Is like, why would I make it up? What, like, you know, every day people make fun of me for being the guy who shot Bigfoot. Would I really make that up for a couple $100 to appear on a documentary like this every couple of years? And you can tell, so in his head, he shot Bigfoot.
Maybe you'd call it bloodlust or something. Where I looked at this thing, I knew I was going to shoot it.
And no amount of evidence will tell him that he's not shot Bigfoot. In his head, he murdered baby Bigfoot and has to live with the guilt of doing that for the rest of his life, even though Bigfoot's not real.
But someone probably went out wearing some kind of pelt and hunting and got shot by him.
We don't know, but, you know, we're referring to the Wiki article on Bigfoot, for anyone who doesn't, if you live under a rock, or are Bigfoot, like very low focus Bigfoot. Bigfoot, also commonly referred to as a Sasquatch, is a large and hairy, human-like mythical creature purported to inhabit forests in North America, particularly the Pacific Northwest. Enthusiasts of the subject have offered various forms of dubious evidence to prove Bigfoot's existence, including anecdotal claims of sightings, as well as alleged photographs, video and audio recordings, hair samples, and casts of large footprints. Most of this evidence has been identified as hoaxes or misidentification in regards to the former, sometimes deliberate, sometimes accidental. It's like sometimes people just find fur, like, or like, I think most famously it's people take pictures of bears, which very occasionally will walk on 2 feet. And from a distance, through some foliage, through, like, you know, a camera that's not quite zoomed in, that can look like a man walking through the woods, like a large, 7-foot-tall, hairy man.
Check out these bears. They jump on their 2 back paws, surprising the tourists.
I have to just bring up as well that recent thing that went viral of, like, the zoo in China had to declare that their sun bear wasn't a man in an outfit.
Yeah, because, sun bears have, like, weirdly lanky proportions compared to other bears. And it does look like a man in a costume, but it's not. The majority of scientists do not find any of the remaining evidence compelling, and instead generally consider it to be the result of a combination of folklore, misidentification, and hoax, rather than a living, breathing creature. Folklorists, however, trace the phenomenon of Bigfoot to a combination of factors and sources, including indigenous cultures, the European wild man figure, folk tales, wishful thinking, and a cultural increase in environmental concerns. And overall, societal awareness of subjects have been cited as additional factors.
He lives here with you?
Yeah, and I'm going to have to mention possibly the most famous, the footage of Bigfoot. You've probably seen it. You might not know the name of it, but it is the Patterson-Gimlin film. And that's the footage that everyone knows of, like, you know, the Bigfoot walking through the woods, like this. And you've probably seen it. I'll put the clip in of it now. And what was really funny is when I'm watching that show, and they talk about that, they go to the area where that was filmed. I'm like, well, this is like ground zero for Bigfoot. It's the most compelling evidence ever. They've never conclusively proven that it was a hoax. And I went, hang on a second. Yes, they have. So I remember I Googled that and I checked and I read up on it. And, like, the Patterson-Gimlin film was filmed by a guy, and 1 week before he filmed it and said, I saw Bigfoot, he was approached by a dude who was trying to make a Bigfoot movie. And had got funding for a Bigfoot movie. And he just so happens to be the guy who helped him publish his findings. And it's like, that seems weirdly coincidental, right? And that's the, and no one ever bothered to, like, bring that up or look into it. That the guy who said I saw Bigfoot is being like financially backed by a guy who tried to make a Bigfoot movie and owned a Bigfoot costume.
Millions of people have been fooled all these years. If they would have paid me the $1,000 like they promised, I would have kept my mouth shut.
Like, he literally owned a Bigfoot costume that he bought.
But there must be no correlation.
Well, that's the thing, and that's why it's so baffling, because I'm watching this show, like, they're talking about it as if, like, this stuff has been publicly known for decades. Owned a Bigfoot costume and was seeking funding for a Bigfoot movie.
You know what would really help with
that
people wanting to see a Bigfoot movie is speculation of Bigfoot.
And the fact that no one ever brings that up, and admittedly, it's very fun to think that there might be a giant ape man wandering around the woods. And I know someone's going to say, because there are people out there, there's true believers out there, who are like, well, you know, there's all sorts of shit out there that we don't know exists. And you go into the deepest part of the ocean, you'll see fish we've never seen before. And that's because we don't go into that part of the ocean. And occasionally they'll go into like forests and rainforests and like jungles and savannas and find things they'd never seen before. And usually those things are like, you know, small lizards, frogs, insects, not giant fucking like 7 foot tall Harry and the Henderson looking creatures
that just wander around casually. Yeah, it's like all those videos that you see is like they're not trying to hide, they're just strolling through the woods.
Yeah, and it's like, oh well, you know, they find like, you know, new primate species all the time. That usually it's like monkeys this big that live in trees, and that's why no fucker spots them. They don't walk around on the ground. Maybe
that's a secret. Maybe we haven't found Bigfoot because we haven't gotten high enough.
He's just in the trees, yeah. So, description.
In the trees.
Bigfoot is often described as a large, muscular, and bipedal ape or human-like creature covered in black, dark brown, or dark reddish hair. Anecdotal descriptions estimate a height of roughly 6 to 9 feet, with some descriptions having the creature standing as tall as 10 to 15 feet tall. And it's like, that's the thing, a 15-foot tall fucking ape wandering around. That's King Kong.
Like, someone's going to have noticed that and got actual footage of it.
Yeah, some alleged observations describe Bigfoot as more human than ape, particularly in regards to the physical features of the face. In 1971, multiple people in the Dalles, Oregon, filed a report describing an overgrown ape, and one of the men claimed to have sighted the creature through the scope of his rifle, but could not bring himself to shoot it because, and I quote, it looked more human than animal.
Where I looked at this thing, I knew I was going to shoot it.
It's a lot of this stuff is like, you know, is it Occam's razor, where it's like the simplest answer is normally the actual solution. And it's like, it was probably either a bear or a dude wearing some camo or some shit just walking through the woods.
It reminds me a little bit of like a great Frankie Boyle bit on it where, like, you know, UFOs, it's like, we got a declassified UFO report, and there's a guy in Wales who said that he come out of the pub one evening. It's like, already I'm starting to believe this. And he saw white things in the distance that he couldn't explain. It's like, maybe that was just a sheep in the distance. Just that was quite far away. And I'm not saying, like, you know, there's shit out there we don't understand, but it's like,
oh yeah,
whenever you look into this stuff, it's always like so fucking, like, it's so flimsy. Like I said, like the Patterson-Gimlin film, one of the guys involved with it owned a Bigfoot suit and was trying to secure funding for a Bigfoot movie, and then just so happened to catch footage of a real Bigfoot.
Yeah.
The next day.
I think one of my favourite ones, if people aren't aware, is like the reported images of the Loch Ness Monster.
Oh yeah, that's the famous one. Yeah, like the very iconic image of the Loch Ness Monster in the water, which was...
It's very similar to, apparently, the shape of a whale's penis.
Oh no, well, yeah, there's that. There's also another one, which is, do you know that shot, the one that everyone says is of Nessie?
Yeah.
The guy on his deathbed said it was fake, and I did it on purpose to piss off the Daily Mail, because they said, like, I wasn't like a real photographer or something like that. So he faked it with like a toy submarine.
Wetherell concocts a scheme to save his reputation.
Duke goes to his stepson, who happens to be a model maker, and asks him to fabricate something that looks like the eyewitness descriptions of the beast. So using plastic, wood, and a toy submarine, they create this model of a creature with a long neck and a small head.
And, like, you know, if you look at the actual photo, like, people who actually know what they're talking about, and that's like, well, it's a monster, have looked at, well, the waves are clearly... If that was like, you know, if the creature is purported to be as big as the photograph suggests, these waves will be like a foot high. You don't get waves like that on Loch Ness. it's clearly like much smaller than expected, and these like the tiny ripples that you'd get from a toy submarine under the water.
But when some experts go back and examine the original uncropped photo, they see something entirely different.
Seeing the uncropped version changes their perspective completely. They believe that whatever this beast is in the water isn't anywhere near 20 feet long.
But then, like, even the guy going on camera and admitting it's all fake, people are like, whoa, how? Was that, I faked it with a submarine. It's like, I've talked before about crop circles. The crop circles phenomenon was started by a guy as a joke, where him and his mate got pissed one evening and just looked at each other and went, should we have a bit of a laugh? It's like, yeah, what are you thinking, mate? And they said, let's just go dick around in that field and draw a big circle and see if it weirds people out.
Such an elaborate prank.
And no, what they did is they went and they got a plank of wood and just gently flattened all the wheat in a field. And then they were howling with laughter when it got like reported as aliens. And they kept up the gimmick for like 20 years.
Well, that's what I mean by elaborate prank, is that not the first one necessarily, but the fact that they kept it up for so long.
What makes it really funny is the guy only admitted to it because his wife thought he was cheating on her. Because, like, where are you going? Like, you're away all the time? Because he started to get really into doing it with his mate. Like, they got really, really into it, and that they would play up to the... basically, they tried to keep fucking with the conspiracy theorists and scientists who was trying to explain it. Because, like, they thought it was funny that people thought it was aliens, but also they thought it was funny to fuck with scientists who were trying to explain it. Because scientists were like, well, it's clearly a natural phenomenon. Like, it could be, like, you know, like a tornado. You know, we do sometimes get those in the UK, like, you know, quite light ones. They could create circles, and that's what he pointed to, like, it's perfectly circular. That would, like, indicate wind going in a circle. So the next day he went and made a square one, just to piss him off. But at the same time, when people were saying it was aliens, he'd also go and fuck with them by making ones that look like... So, well, it's clearly an alien landing thing, so he'd make one that was like a diamond or something. And his wife thought he was cheating on her until he showed her, like, no, I've been making crop circles. Like, no, you haven't. There's hundreds of them, and they're all over the world because other pranksters started copying him. And then he was like, no, honestly, and he showed it because he kept like logs of every one he'd made, and like as on like blueprints and stuff, and he showed her the equipment. She's like, no, it's not. Like, you're making this up. And he's like, no, look, you design a crop circle and I'll make it. And she designed one and he made it in the field the next day, and people thought that was fucking aliens. And the amazing thing about that, which shows how much people just refuse not to believe stuff when they're like that far in, is when he admitted that he'd done it. UFOologists were like, well, you can't because it can't be made by human hands. He went, well, I made it with a plank of wood, and I shit you not, a baseball cap with a hole drilled through it, with a piece of wire in front of his eye to line it up.
We wanted to make the UFO societies think that a UFO had landed, you see. And after a few years, they didn't know whether to believe it or not.
It's an obvious, I mean, it's absolutely obvious. This here, you see, it's not consistent at all with a genuine phenomenon.
I just don't believe them, no.
Absolutely beautiful. There's no traffic, there's no human beings, there's no nothing. There's a full moon in the sky, lovely starry night.
With your cheese rolls and your beer, what's better?
And then he stand on the piece of wood, flatten the wheat, take one more step. And when he explained this to ufologists of like, I can make it with a piece of wood and a baseball cap, they said to him, well, how do you explain all the other ones that appeared? And he was like, so you telling me that? The ones that I made, which were the first ones seen, weren't aliens, but then the aliens got involved? And that's like an actual argument from ufologists of, maybe the aliens... You might have made all these ones, but the other ones
found it fucking hilarious, and they were like, "Let's get in on it."
Yeah, that's the thing. And that's the thing, because the first one scene, like the guy who started it admitted it was fake, and then other people clearly like thought it was funny as well and started doing it. But it's like the actual argument from ufologists is that maybe the aliens thought it was a good idea and got involved as well, and that seems just so fucking funny.
Well, it may be that the hoax is not that they made the corn circles, but in fact they didn't make the corn circles. We just don't know at this stage whether they can make circles in the way they say or not.
But in their defense, like, that would be the perfect defense for aliens, is like, What, do you really think that we copied this guy?
And that's the thing. And when he come out, and he had like a blueprint for every single one, and photographs of him doing it, because him and his mate took photographs, it was funny. And he could had unequivocal evidence that it was fake. People were like, no, you're lying.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how on earth intelligent people of that sort, professors, etc., can just walk into a cornfield and see some flattened corn and make all this out of it over the years? I mean, we're astounded as anyone else.
We used to laugh. We used to talk to each other when we're doing this. But all it is flattened corn. If you walk in, you flattened it.
Or like there's the dude who he made giant penguin feet out of wood and then just would walk around his beach near his house just every couple of weekends. And people thought it was a giant penguin. And again, when he admitted it, and it's just a picture of one of these giant, big, inflatable feet. And I was like, well, no, he's making it up. He's trying to hide something. He's been paid off. And it's like, no, I just thought it was funny.
There's always got to be a greater conspiracy, Karl.
Yeah, and well, speaking of conspiracy theories, like proposed explanations. Various explanations have been suggested for sightings and to offer conjecture on what existing animal has been misidentified in supposed sightings of Bigfoot. Scientists typically attribute sightings to hoaxes or misidentifications of known animals and their tracks, in particular black bears. You might be thinking, well, a black bear? I'd know a bear if I saw a bear. So again, they can stand up and from a distance through the foliage, like, maybe it's like a warm day with a little bit of that haze that comes up. You could think that's a person. Also, like their tracks. You might think, well, I know a bear tracks. It's like the big bear paws with its little beans. In soft mud where sliding can occur, or, if it's like tracked over by other animals, or, just any sort of weather phenomenon, you could mistake that for 5 little toes.
Simple differences between grizzly bear tracks and black bear tracks. One of them is the curvature of the toes. If we were to take a straight edge,
and it says that, scientists theorize that mistaken identification of American black bears as Bigfoot are a likely explanation for most reported sightings, particularly when observers view the subject from far away, are in dense foliage, or there are poor lighting conditions. Additionally, black bears have been observed and recorded walking upright, usually as a result of injury. While upright, adult black bears can stand roughly 5 to 7 feet tall, whereas a grizzly can stand 8 to 9 feet tall, which are both within the range of anecdotal Bigfoot reports. More people report seeing Bigfoot in areas with documented black bear populations. They concluded that if Bigfoot is there, it's probably a bear.
I like that as a little slogan.
And some people have said escaped apes. Some propose that sightings of Bigfoot may be simply people observing and misidentifying known great apes such as chimpanzees, gorillas and orangutans that have escaped from captivity from zoos, circuses and exotic pets belonging to private owners. This explanation is often proposed in relation to the skunk ape, as some scientists argue the humid subtropical climate of the southeastern United States could potentially support a population of escaped apes. And then the one we know is humans. Humans have been mistaken for Bigfoot, with some incidents leading to injury. For example, in 2013, a 21-year-old man in Oklahoma was arrested after he told law enforcement he shot his friend in the back while their group was allegedly hunting for Bigfoot. And that's why it's just like a great idea that you got people in the woods shooting at human-shaped targets. Mm-hmm. That's never going to end poorly, is it? In 2017, a shamanist wearing clothing made from animal furs was vacationing in North Carolina forest when reports of an alleged Bigfoot sighting flooded in. The Greenville Police Department issued a public notice not to shoot Bigfoot for fear of mistakenly injuring or killing someone in a fursuit. So furries in the woods taking photos. We mentioned this in a previous episode.
Well, I think as I mentioned earlier, I think it's literally used as a hunting technique to wear furs.
Yeah, or something that just blurs your outline, like a ghillie suit or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which from a distance with shadow, you could look like a creature with black fur. Likewise, you had when they were filming Star Wars, like the second one, in the forest, the guy playing Chewbacca had to wear a high-vis vest and have people around him, so hunters didn't think he was a bear or Bigfoot. It says that in 2018, a person was shot at multiple times by a hunter near Montana who claimed he mistook him for a Bigfoot. Multiple times as well. Which
just
means one,
confirm that kill, Karl.
One, that's fucked up. Two, that guy's a shit shot and should not be in the forest hunting anything. Because he can't hit a fucking standing still target. And it says that, additionally, some sightings have been attributed to feral humans or hermits living in the wilderness. Like one story, the Wild Man of Navidad, tells of a wild man ape who roamed the wilderness of eastern Texas in the mid-19th century, stealing food and goods from residents. A search party allegedly captured an escaped African slave. There's just a guy who fucking like didn't speak no English, just ran into the woods and hid there. It says that another explanation could be pareidolia, if I pronounce that correctly, which is the name for the phenomenon of humans seeing human faces and human-like figures where they don't exist, because just naturally our brains are trained to recognize human faces and the human silhouette, just as a way of helping us identify other humans at a distance. And that's why people often see like faces in like Toast, or you look into the night sky and you look at the stars, and well, that's clearly like Orion. It's just some stars, but your mind's trained to see the human form.
Or like people will look at a car and be like, "Oh, look, it's smiling at me. It's got like two eyes and a smile." It's like, no, it's a car.
Your brain is just predisposed to just recognize the human form and a face. Just that's how you communicate and identify with other humans. And then finally we have hoaxes. Both Bigfoot believers and non-believers agree that many reported sightings are likely hoaxes. Author Jerome Clark argues that the Jacko affair was a hoax involving a 1884 newspaper report of an ape-like creature captured in British Columbia. He cites research by John Green, who found that several contemporaneous British Columbia newspapers regarded the alleged capture as highly dubious. And as I mentioned earlier, the guy who's like, he had a Bigfoot suit. That was another dude as well, who was like, I caught Bigfoot. I've got it in a box. Do you want to come see my dead Bigfoot? And it was an ape suit, like a secondhand ape suit from like, I think Planet of the Apes or like, similar knockoff movie that he just shoved a possum guts into. And when they said, how did you expect us to believe this when we DNA tested it? Just from what's DNA? Yeah.
Yeah. And, obviously there are going to be people out there like thinking it, either for whatever reason making up like these fraud cases, but how dumb do you have to be to hear that people are shooting Bigfoot dead on sight and then be like, it'll be really funny if I get myself a Bigfoot outfit and pretend to be one?
Yeah. Thing is though, it would be kind of funny.
It would be kind of funny if it weren't for the threat of just a shotgun to the back of the head.
Mate, it would be so good for the bands. And you know what? Speaking of, let's imagine that Bigfoot is real. What does Bigfoot actually act like? Because there's plenty of people out there who claim that you can get a degree on Bigfoot if you want. Right? You can get a degree on cryptozoology, which is animals that are purported to exist, but there's no proof that they do exist. So like the Loch Ness monster, Sasquatches, Bigfoot, all sorts of other stuff. So alleged behaviour. Some Bigfoot researchers allege that Bigfoot throws rocks as territorial displays and for communication. Other alleged behaviours include audible blows struck against trees or wood knocking. Further alleged to be communicative, and they have that in that documentary I mentioned earlier. The guy's like, I can speak Bigfoot. And the guy's like, you can speak, and he goes to a tree and he whacks it with a stick. And he said, listen, and then you hear a return knock. And what's Bigfoot in it? And the research looks at him, how do you know that's not just someone else with a stick hitting a tree? He's like, well, no one else knows that we do this. And he says that, knowing that they give tours and show people how to do it. And he's like, how do you know it's just not other people? And it's like that the $10 million Bigfoot hunt. They put 10 people looking for Bigfoot into the same forest. And there's one guy who's just like screaming the Bigfoot noise as loud as he can. And then they'll smash cut to someone else like, do you hear that? That's a Bigfoot. There's just one of the other 10 people who's there. Like my favourite guy is the guy who brings, I shit you not, Lucas, he takes a lightsaber into the woods and swings it around. I'm like, well, Bigfoot's going to be attracted to this. Bigfoot likes Star Wars then.
So, the idea with the lightsabers is to generate curiosity if there's a Sasquatch in the area.
Yeah, because there was a Bigfoot in Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
It's Chewy, so he'll get on board.
Jeremiah Byron, the host of the Bigfoot Society podcast, believes that Bigfoots are omnivores, stating they eat both plants and meat. I've seen accounts that they eat everything from berries, leaves, nuts to fruit, salmon, rabbit, elk, and bear. Ronnie LeBlanc, the host of Expedition Bigfoot on the Travel Channel, indicated that he's heard anecdotal reports of Bigfoot hunting and consuming deer. And the idea that even a humanoid as big as Bigfoot could catch a deer on foot in the woods is laughable. And that's how you know it's like complete fucking bullshit. Mm-hmm. Like, I believe that there's a giant 7-foot-tall ape creature out there that can hunt and track down a deer on foot. Mm-hmm. And rip it apart with its bare hands. It's like, no. Like, people struggle to catch one of those things with a fucking rifle.
Yeah.
And then we have like the evidence claims, which are just like, a body taken in the year 2000 from the Gifford Pinchot National Forest, dubbed a skookum cast, believed by some to be made as a Bigfoot, that sat down in the mud to eat fruit left out by research during the filming of an episode of the Animal X television show. Skeptics believe the cast to be made by a known animal such as an elk. And it's like they find footprints all the time. And it's like, it's probably just a big dude.
Yeah.
And you know what? We could no doubt do this all day, but we're running short on recording time now, Lucas. So just anything to add before we head off? Besides, like,
Bigfoot is real, and I will hear no.
You know what? No,
slander.
Wiki Weekends is over because Lucas is like he's been biting his tongue of like, no, Karl, Bigfoot is real. Maybe we'll be able to talk about my favourite Bigfoot show, where it's like they hunt Bigfoot and he's just a guy in the woods who just goes, ah! It's like, that's Bigfoot.
We're gonna see Lyle do a squatch call.
I like that.
So how do you argue with that evidence? I'm just like, that's a Bigfoot.
He's real.